Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another installment in our boss fight breakdown series. The series where we take a step back and look at the attacks and patterns of the different bosses found within Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3. Today we are continuing through and finishing the boss fights that are showcased in the Dark Dimension. So let's go ahead and have a look at these final two fights, those being the fights against Loki and Dormammu. Now, real quick before we jump into the meat of today's boss fights, do check to see if you are subscribed to the channel. If you're not, please take a moment to do so. The subscription is free and easy, and I have content coming to you on a daily basis. And feel free to leave a like on the video if you found this particular segment helpful. So without further ado, let's jump into the boss fights of today's video. So as we mentioned, the first boss fight that we have here is the fight against Loki. And the Loki fight is broken up into two different stages. That's a pretty common theme that we see within the boss fights in this game. Now, Loki has a couple of different attacks that are primarily based off of his main abilities. The first attack that the couple of attacks that he will go ahead and throw out are an energy beam, which arcs out across the battle stage. He also has a couple of his standard melee slashing attacks, but additionally to those different attacks in his arsenal, he will also attempt to kind of use an ice sphere in the proximity of where he is, as well as an explosive energy ball type attack. Now, as he transitions into the second phase, he does summon a couple of what I would deem shadow clones, and these clones attack with a variety of different element-charged attacks. One of them will attack with fire, one of them will attack with electricity, and one of them will attack with ice. Now, the clones are a lot weaker than the standard Loki that we see, but they are still pretty formidable and make things kind of challenging, so you may find it in your best interest to go ahead and take them out as they start to appear. Now, that's not the only adjustment as Loki goes into Stage 2, as some of his attacks are also amped up and changed. As you saw there, he is now no longer using his ice attack in an immediate radius. He then disappears and then crashes down from above to deal additional damage to any enemies that may have gotten trapped in that ice as it was being used. Now, as always with the different boss fights, I highly recommend using your extreme attacks whenever you have Loki in his vulnerable state after staggering him out, as that is one of your most reliable sources of damage, as it's not one of the types that is altered or differs based on the regular story quest, though that does not carry true to a lot of the different quests that you do in the Infinity Rifts. So at this point where you are missing your extreme attacks, if you have more work that you need to do to burn down Loki, I do recommend that you just hit him with whatever synergy and abilities that you have, and you should be able to transition through the remainder of this fight pretty easily and be able to progress through into the rest of the story. Now, the second boss that we're looking at today is Dormammu, and this is one of the final Infinity Stones that we need, as Dormammu does possess the Reality Stone as we go about collecting the stones here. And his fight can be a little technical and difficult, but as soon as you get the rhythm down of it, you should be able to take him on fairly easily. As we've experienced through different parts of this dungeon, there are some crystals that can be enhanced with energy type attacks, whether that be flame balls that Dormammu throws at you or energy attacks being unleashed by the mindless ones that pop into this particular fight. And the best thing that you're going to find with taking on Dormammu is you just want to dodge the enemy attacks as best you can and grab as many of those crystals as possible and get them supercharged, and you can tell the difference between those as the aura will peak up. Now, Dormammu has a couple of attacks that you will want to keep an eye on, and it's particularly some of the attacks that he summons up from the ground, as most other attacks that he has can be either avoided or can be used to fuel those crystals. Now, There are two different attacks that come up from the ground that you particularly want to be aware of, and there are some patterns that will help you distinguish whether or not that attack is going to be beneficial in allowing you to charge your crystal, or if it's going to take your feet out from under you and cause the attack to fail. And that last bit that you saw just there, where the ground crumbles up with some rocks first and then transitions into a reddish-orange circle, that is an indication of a flame spire that is about to come up, which will supercharge those crystals very easily. Now, as he gets into the second stage of his fight, the dynamic changes a little bit, and you'll probably start to see some frames dropping as well, as it is kind of a particle effect heavy attack. Now, what you will need to do is, if you can take out the elemental orbs, that may make things a little bit easier, but you can actually use them to your benefit, as the crystals can become supercharged with the attacks from both the electricity and the fire orbs, though the ice ones will cause you to drop the crystals that you have, as they are more of a physical attack rather than an energy-based one. Now, you will have to supercharge this crystal a couple of different times, because in addition to needing to use them to attack Dormammu directly and stagger him down, he conjures up a protective barrier that can only be shattered with the use of those crystals. So you do want to use 2 fully charged crystals to break down that barrier, and as soon as you have the second barrier taken down, you will need a third in order to stagger him out completely. Though it is convenient that Dormammu is damaged quite easily using those crystals and is fully depleted without the need of using multiple crystals. Now, the other ground attack that I had mentioned that Dormammu will bring up, it's a little bit different than this particular style of the flame erupting, where there's more of a red ring that appears on the ground, and then some large spires will be summoned from the ground, and that causes some pretty significant problems for you if you are looking to charge that crystal, because it will take the ground out from under you as those rock spikes come up, and that will then cause the crystal to drop out of your hand, and it's going to make things very difficult for you as a whole. Now, Dormammu's third phase is practically identical to his first phase, or not his first phase, but his second phase, where he conjures up a protective barrier, and you will need to use some of the charged crystals in order to break down the barrier and gain access to Dormammu. And for whatever reason in this fight, that went a little bit different than most of the other fights that I've had with him. Because we do get the first 2 stones fully charged and thrown into that barrier to break it down. But unfortunately, this last stone I dropped because I had picked it up before Dormammu retaliated with his arm thrust there. And for a while, I thought I could just kind of run around and wait for some more of the mindless ones to appear. But this is my last-ditch crystal that I have, and I ran right into those meteoroids. So at this point, there's no other crystals that I have at my disposal. So again, I'm thinking we can just run around and hopefully have some more mindless one spawns. But as soon as he cycles through a couple of his major attacks a couple of different times, I do come to the conclusion that we're probably not going to get any more grunts. So honestly, my first thought is just to resort to whatever type of ranged type attacks that I may have. And it actually does work relatively well in terms of getting Dormammu's health depleted. And Gambit was the one that I defaulted to because his deadly deal is a pretty efficient damage dealer and stagger. And just with a couple more uses there, we do end up getting Dormammu finished out, and that boss fight is finished. So that's going to do it for the boss fights that we are looking at and breaking down in today's video. Again, if you are finding this series enjoyable, please feel free to leave a like, and don't forget to comment and let me know what characters you're excited to see in this series as we progress through. Thanks again for watching, and you have yourself a great rest of your day.